Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Beth Worrell and it's a pleasure to welcome you today to our webinar on AI and foundation models for Australia. Before we start today, I do want to recognise that many of us in Australia are meeting on the lands of the traditional people. I want to pause to acknowledge the traditional owners upon the lands upon which we meet. I want to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Today, I am joining you from the Kaurna lands down here in South Australia, and we would love to hear about where you are joining us from today. So we are very thrilled to be joined today by Dr. Stefan Hajkovic, who is going to speak on his research report in regard to AI and foundation models. It's a fascinating opportunity for Australia, and we're at a really exciting point in time to make some decisions about how we take this forward. And so Stefan will be presenting the report. We'll provide a link that you can use to download the report as well. And we hope that there will be plenty of time to submit questions and have a Q&A session. For that, please use the Q&A function in the webinar so that we can make sure that we get to as many questions as we possibly can. This recording will also be available on our YouTube channel in a week or so. Before we get into today's content, I do want to pause to tell you a little bit more about the National AI Centre. So we were established a couple of years ago. We're part of the CSIRO Data 61, and we have been set up with the support of DISA. And we have two primary functions: to advance and promote the adoption of safe and responsible AI across Australian businesses, and to also grow the AI industry here in Australia. We have a multitude of programs and activities that you can find out about on the CSIRO and National AI Centre websites. We also are very grateful to the support that we have received from a number of partners, including and in particular Google and CEDA, who are the foundation members of the National AI Centre. So thank you so much for your support. The program that I look after is the Responsible AI Network. We have 7 pillars of content that we are putting together. We're actually working right now on a new digital platform to help make this content even more accessible and compelling for you to get information about AI and the use of AI in your business. We work with a number of partners who you can see here on the screen. We would love to hear from you if you have any interest in working with us and promoting content on responsible AI use here in Australia. That would be fantastic. We have a heap of content and a variety of events, including this and many other webinars going forward here in Australia as well. So this network is designed to bring together a community of practice, all focused on the safe and responsible use of artificial intelligence here in Australia. We have some exciting events coming up, and I'd like to hand over to my wonderful colleague Rita Arrigo, who will tell you about a couple of events that she is working on. Rita?
Thank you, Beth, and we are super excited to announce today our next AI Industry Day. It's going to be held in Sydney on the 22nd of May, and we're focusing on AI at work. You'll be able to see presentations, including the power of responsible AI for your business and building AI into your business. We'll also be showcasing partners across a range of industries, including climate tech, sustainability, workforce transformation, and improving lives. And this is so exciting to have over 20 AI industry ecosystem members who are building Australian AI solutions that you'll be able to meet at the event. This is a free event, and we'd love you to register. It starts at 11:30 and finishes at 5 p.m. And you'll be able to not only engage in the showcase presentations as well as some networking. We also would like to invite you to be part of the AI Prompt Engineering Masterclass. This is a 2-hour masterclass that will help beginners harness the power of generative AI in your business. And it will equip you with knowledge and tools to begin integrating AI into your operations, marketing, customer relationships, and making every aspect of your business smarter and more efficient. This is running between 9:30 and 11:30, and it's a ticketed event. And I hope you register for that as well. Thank you so much for your time today and allowing me to share this information about AI at work coming up on the 22nd of May.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Rita. I know that these events have been extremely popular in other cities. So if you are interested, we encourage you to RSVP and register as soon as you possibly can. And on that, we are also very excited to announce the date of our National AI Summit. This is focusing on leadership in the context of AI here in Australia, but we will have an international focus, which is very exciting as well. This year, this event will be held on Monday, the 21st of October. We also have some follow-up events and masterclasses on the 22nd of October, and we will be in the city of Melbourne. So for further information about this event, please do register for updates for this event on the CSIRO website. We will also be promoting it on the National AI Centre website. And if you are a subscribing member of our news information and events on the National AI Centre, watch out for an email when this information is available and you are able to register. We did sell out this event last year, so it is really going to be a fantastic event, and we encourage you to RSVP early and register as soon as you can for that as well. So with that, I would like to hand over to Stefan for his presentation today on large language models and the opportunity for Australia. Thank you, Stefan.
Thank you very much. And I might just check that my monitor is visible and all working. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay, so my name is Stefan Ojkovic. I'm a Chief Research Consultant in CSIRO, and my job is primarily about bridging this gap between science and technology and policy and strategy. I got working on artificial intelligence in about 2017 and published and authored the National Roadmap in 2019 and the Ethics Framework in 2019, which is now captured as a set of ethics principles for artificial intelligence on the Australian government website. And today, AI is pretty much all of my job. It's what I'm working on with the team at NAIC, looking at strategy and policy dimensions about the how-to factor on AI to help Australian companies into using it. And today I want to take you through our recent report that I wrote with Eleanor Huntington from CSIRO, who's on the executive team. And it is all about the use of AI, about AI foundation models, which is really the big thing that's changing the world of AI at the moment. So let me jump into that. First of all, I might start by saying I'm not even really sure if there's such a thing as AI. Which is a bit odd, given I've spent so much time working on it. I see it. I think it's still maths and stats. It's very clever and powerful maths and stats, but I think it's worth sort of reflecting on that a little bit. And I think we're also looking at quite a long history of AI development. It got its name in 1956 at the Dartmouth Conference. A sort of significant paper was published a few years earlier by Alan Turing, which was Can Machines Think, which kicked off a lot of that thinking. And it was a really sort of frontier space, challenging existing norms and ways we did things. And that's what's continues to be so exciting about it. But I think since its beginnings, AI has gone through some boom bust cycles into up to 1973 or 1974. It went through what they call the AI summer and springtime, where it grew really quickly and became a huge focus of attention. But in 1974 or thereabouts, a report was written by a UK mathematician, James Lighthouse, which was put into Parliament, which found that it had failed to deliver on a lot of its promises, and AI went went through what was called the first winter from 1974 to 1980, where investment dried up, attention went away, people sort of were disinterested in it, and it sort of fell off the radar until we get to about the early 1980s, when it really picks up again. This time the business community heavily picking up AI-based approaches in what they are doing. And it booms again until the late 80s, until about 1987. And then it starts to go through its next winter from 1987 to 1993 is the general view of when that happened, when investment dried up and whether it's the hype and expectations were met, weren't, and disappeared again. Then it grew again. It hasn't really had another winter since. And in our work, we've looked at the possibility of it. Everything looks right now for another winter to come, but there's some really different things going on in the world of today. The prevalence of AI use, the extent to which it's out there, the amount of investment, and the new tools and capabilities that keep on emerging. We don't think it's likely to happen again, not in the same way as it has in the past. But it is interesting to take that longer term view of it. This isn't the report I'm talking about today, but the previous one to what we did is what I call Artificial Intelligence for Science, or the Steep Upward Sloping Graphs report of recent times, where we can look at the share of research on AI in the health sciences, life sciences, physical sciences. That's the really steep line going up highest, in social sciences and humanities. But all the lines go really steep within the last 5 years or so. In computer science, it's over a third of all research is on the topic of AI, probably more since September 2022. And it's in the arts and humanities as well. It's not just the physical sciences. It's pretty much everywhere we look, and it's changing how we do things at CSIRO considerably. So that's a backdrop. And a more recent snapshot of patent publications and research publications about AI is doing this. So I think it is fair to still say there is a bit of an you ain't seen nothing yet factor about AI, that there is so much being put into the knowledge pipeline, into patents, that is yet to come out. And when I wrote the 2019 roadmap for Australia on AI, we did not see 2023. We did not, we wouldn't have been allowed to really describe the world of ChatGPT and some of the other big models that you're probably using in terms of the capabilities they had and the amount of impact they were having on businesses and how the economy was likely to operate. But it happened. A lot of it happened. Within those lines I just showed you, one of the key discoveries was in 2017 in this paper published by Vaswani et al. In Europe's Attention is All You Need, which has now got about 120,000 citations, one of the most cited papers in the history of humankind. Very impactful. What did it do? This was about focusing the machine learning, the deep learning model on the parts of the problem that mattered, which massively improved its performance. And that's why ChatGPT got so good. That's why a lot of these models have become so good. And those more discoveries are like that. So what are we seeing in the world of AI models and AI foundation models? This is one interesting graph published just recently in the 2024 Stanford AI Index report, where we can see the human baseline of benchmark performance here, and then we can see a range of capabilities that have hit that benchline pretty quickly. Image classification, basic level reading comprehension, visual reading, medium level reading comprehension, visual common sense reading, competition level mathematics, which is really hard. The human benchmark has been hit and exceeded, new benchmarks are being designed, but the capability is moving faster, I think, than a lot of people would have expected, and likely to continue doing so. So let's get into the world of AI foundation models, which I think are the really significant thing shaking up and putting AI onto a different trajectory. First of all, what are they? They typically, but not always, and this is the thing, there's a bit of a blurry line between what's an AI foundation model and what's just an AI model. But typically they use deep learning, which needs intensive computational resources. So typically it has neural networks, artificial neural networks inside deep learning, and a lot of matrix algebra, which requires those highly intense computational resources. Foundation models are pre-trained on vast troves of data, typically, again, not always, and we might start seeing more boutique, curated, smaller data sets being used, but typically the ones we're looking at are trained on vast troves of data. And that was a key thing about why why GPT-4 and some of the others got so good. They can be multimodal: text, numbers, images, video, audio, and robotics, and the ability to move between those as inputs and outputs. They typically use unsupervised machine learning with unlabeled data, but again, not always. And they are typically multi-purpose and can be fine-tuned and adapted to perform wide-ranging downstream tasks, many of which were not envisaged by the developers. They enable transfer learning, so knowledge gained in the pre-training phase can be used on smaller task-specific data sets, and that's how a lot of people are using AI foundation models that are out there, is that they're taking their own smaller data set and using it within the context of the larger one to do some sort of specific task. And they support intuitive user interfaces such as natural language interfaces. How do you make one? You collect and prepare a data set, and that's where a lot of the work goes. You choose a model architecture. Often the transformer architecture is the one I described, is the one that's used in the machine learning algorithms. You then train the model and go through processes of improving and refining it until it's starting to do the task it needs to do and perform the prediction it needs to do. And then you can evaluate and improve the model over time, and then fine tune and deploy the model. What ingredients do you need to make an AI foundation model? You need skilled workers, and there's a shortage of these globally and in Australia, but you need people with the right sort of skills in mathematics, machine learning, data science, who can actually make a model like this. Then you need data, lots of it, and it needs to be in a format suitable for your analysis. So a lot of data formatting and validation is often required. You need compute power. You need a bunch of devices like that one shown there, which is a GPU, a graphics processing unit, originally designed for graphics processing, but quickly was discovered to support the matrix algebra of machine learning calculations really effectively. That's what NVIDIA bet on and won on, because they're now a $2 trillion company providing the H100 and G100 GPU chips to support AI development. And there's a big global demand for these things, and that and limited supply, which is likely to happen for a while to come. Microsoft signaled to all its investors in a recent shareholder meeting, one of the big risks they face is a lack of GPUs to continue with AI model development. So it's challenging to come by these things. According to NVIDIA, a cluster of 1,024 A100 chips were used to train, that's one of their GPU chips, were used to train OpenAI's GPT-3 model. There's not really an official statistic on what was required for GPT-4 that I can find in the open source literature, but a lot. And that's typically what is required. Ethics and rules are also part of AI model development. You need to know what they are and have ability to put these into your model in the form of guardrails often. There's been an explosion of models since that transformer architecture was published in the year 2017. You can see here the cumulative total. One view takes it up to 77 models, but a German paper published by the government of Germany finds 125 models by 2023 as well. So different views of how many are out there. The vast majority also are being made from really United States, 73%, and 15% from China, with the rest coming from the rest of the world, the UK, France, and Germany playing a significant role in that, and then not much coming out of other countries, just a smaller amount, but Australia still there gets a blue shading. What are the main commercial models that you're starting to see? And there's been just huge development in this space, but when I'm working with NAIC on AI strategy about helping companies adopt AI, and what we're finding is we're collaborating with Melbourne Business School on this too. We're finding that the AI strategy problem for a company is often seen through the lens of buying one of these and getting to work on one of these models. So we have OpenAI ChatGPT, which uses GPT-4, which was a huge upgrade from GPT-3. GPT-5 is forthcoming, and there's a lot of excitement about that. It might be a significant improvement yet again. For what it's worth, Sam Altman said a 10% across the board improvement in capability. So we'll see. Another one by Anthropic, which Amazon and Google both have a share in. Amazon a $4 billion stake. I think Google's is around $2 billion. Is the company that makes it, and that's Claude 3. It also is a really powerful and capable model that is particularly good for business workflows and for coding tasks. Meta AI have put out Llama 2, which will soon be upgraded to Llama 3, which is a large language model, and it's open access, so it can be used freely. Microsoft Copilot accesses a suite of foundation models, one of the main ones of which is GPT-4, and Amazon Bedrock likewise uses a suite of foundation models, one of which it really draws upon is Claude 3, but it does get others as well. There's Google Gemini suite of foundation models, are very powerful, and Google have just published a paper in Archive, the Google researchers from DeepMind, on the use on MedGemini, which is truly astounding. It is sort of leveraging the large language modeling capabilities of Gemini, but mixing them up with image and capabilities as well. So you can take a picture of a skin feature and ask it for a diagnosis, and it performs incredibly well at these tasks, according to early research. So there's a suite of foundation models around Gemini, and there's Baidu's Ernie, which I know little about, but is also a powerful set of tools, and a lot is going on in China in terms of AI foundation model development as well. So those are the main commercial ones, but I do note that 125 models have been built, and we're seeing more star-specific ones. And I think also important to point out that this isn't just limited to the world of what you're seeing on a computer screen with information processing. This is the real physical world that gets upgraded via AI foundation models. So a lot of the image generation models and the image interpretation capabilities in foundation models are used by systems like the Stanford University Mobile Aloha robot, and that picture there is showing it frying a shrimp in a person's standard kitchen. And what's really impressive is this is not a kitchen that's set up for a robot. This is like your kitchen or mine, and it can work out what the spatula is. It can see the shrimp because it knows what a shrimp it's got the ability to work out what is the shrimp, and it can interact with these objects and cook it so that you can eat a shrimp. So that the world of robotics is significantly benefiting from the growth of foundation models as well. And lastly, what's it sort of look like for the end user? There's the end user. So you're using a ChatGPT, but it could be a wide range of different types of foundation models increasingly in the future. There's a wrapper, a software interface like ChatGPT or Google Gemini. There's guardrails that are put in place before you get to the model to stop it releasing offensive or dangerous content or extreme content. And then there are the many AI foundation models upon which it draws upon. And that's how a lot of us will experience an AI foundation model. Okay, let's go into the productivity dimension of AI foundation models. In 2019, most companies were saying no, they weren't getting much value out of AI adoption. It was experimental, and we weren't seeing that the AI adoption translate from the laboratory or from experimentation into real productive and practical application. But as we get to 2022, this same survey done, published in the Sloan Management Review, and it was done by Boston Consulting Group and New Vantage Partners, a consulting firm. They find 90% are reporting, yes, we are getting value from AI investments. A lot of them are getting really big value from AI investments. And I think we are well and truly into that phase now where companies are picking up this tool and seeing really strong and positive returns. It's gone from experimental for some companies to something which is really making a big difference. And the ability to access now and use at your fingertips very powerful foundation models is core to this value creation. And I think it's likely to keep on going. We also see an urgency of business leaders to pick up AI models. The Cisco AI Readiness Index, published last year in 2023, is a survey of 8,000 business leaders from companies with greater than 500 staff across 30 markets globally, and they find 97% of leaders feel urgent need to adopt AI technology within the coming year, with over half anticipating negative impacts if they fail to act. And that's in my work what I'm seeing too. We're aware of the risks of using AI, and they're discussed a lot, but there is also a really big risk that your competitor figures it out first. And that is something that is increasingly important for some of the companies that I'm working with. So in terms of productivity, why are all these benefits here? Because businesses are recognizing the productivity gains of AI, especially AI foundation models that they're now able to access. Why I think it matters is, well, we had the Treasury, the Australian Treasury, downgrade our productivity forecasts from 1.5% to 1.2%. That had a consequence of downgrading our economic growth forecast for the next 40 years from 3.1% over the previous 40 years down to 2.2% over the coming 40 years. We basically said our kids, sorry, but due to declining productivity, you guys can expect half the rate of income growth that we enjoyed in our generation. And the one thing the Treasury Intergenerational Report says that changes this really is the expanded use of digital technology. That's because the bulk of our economy is in the service sector, the bulk of it is in the knowledge sector, and it is really that's where we can get the productivity gains from using foundation AI models, generative AI, and a wide range of AI tools. And I think as a general purpose tech, that's our best bet for changing this productivity slump. We can see it happening. So a couple of studies done on productivity on foundation models. This one is on the use of GitHub Copilot. So Microsoft GitHub and the MIT Sloan School of Management recruited 95 professional programmers on Upwork, all of them accepted. The treatment group used GitHub Copilot to write code, and the control group did not. They just did it the normal way. The research found that programmers using Copilot successfully completed their tasks 56% quicker. Less experienced programmers and programmers with heavy workloads benefited more than others, so more than 56%. And that's so consistent with what I'm seeing too. Early novice people in any sort of role where AI foundation models are being used to help them, they go a lot faster and get much greater benefit. Participants had self-reported productivity increase of 35%. They were actually doing a lot better than they thought when they were matching up with these models. It's my experience. I have these models open on my screen to write Python scripts and so forth for me all the time, and it is massively speeding up the ground I can get. It's also letting me do stuff I couldn't otherwise do. Why does this matter for national productivity? Well, in the United States, there's 4.6 million people working in these jobs, earning 2% of US GDP, or $464.8 billion. If we just made them 56% quicker, that's a massive benefit, right? And this isn't just going to be computer programmers. Let me look at another study, management consultants. These ones use GPT-4 through ChatGPT. So the Harvard Business School and Boston Consulting Group partnered to study this. They gave 758 consultants 18 realistic tasks. They could have been in the legal area. They might have been management strategy consultants. They gave them these 18 realistic tasks. Half of those 758 consultants used GPT-4, generative AI, and half did not. The research found that the consultants using Gen AI completed 12% more tasks and did them 25% quicker. New consultants with less experience and skills benefited more, a 43% productivity improvement. But for tasks designed to be outside GPT-4 capability, consultants using the generative AI product were 19% more likely to get it wrong at the same time. So there was stuff that, even though the overall productivity was happening, there was some real significant stuff ups going on when they used it for things it couldn't do. And that is one of the challenges. But I would say this is about a year ago, and a year in generative AI is a long time. I think from my knowledge of the tools, there's a lot of improvement in hallucinations. There's a lot of improvement about inaccurate information coming out of them. And we're all getting a lot better at knowing how to use them. So I'm not sure that those numbers would still be the same. One thing though, so I've shown you evidence of really strong productivity uplift for what is a large part of the economy. You know, in Australia, we would estimate that over 50% of workers are knowledge workers. Like most of the people on this call would be knowledge workers where the benefits are. There's something interesting that's going on that was noticed by a Nobel Prize winning economist, Robert Solov, which has been called Solow's paradox because it seems to persist. We can find strong evidence of productivity uplift at the worker level and at the firm level, but we cannot find that translating to national level productivity uplift. We struggled to see that. It could be a measurement issue. It also is an issue that we don't have the base case of what it would look like without all these tools. And it also could be something to do with what they call the J curve. The J curve is where for the steam engine, for standard computers, for a lot of tech, we see a decline in productivity when they're first introduced because all the sailing ships had to give up sailing and switch to steam. And that process of conversion actually saw them become less efficient and less good at shipping stuff around for a while until they figured it out. And then steamships just took over completely and massively made things a lot quicker. Well, that could also apply to AI, but some of the researchers on that, such as Eric Brynjolfsson from Stanford University, think that the J curve will happen quicker than it has in other fields. Another aspect to AI and productivity is R&D, and this sort of is a bit of a elephant in the room issue and a lot of discussions in Australia of what's going on with AI. AI is inherently about experimentation. It's about R&D. It's about pushing into a very new space, even at the company level. So companies I work with, the really significant benefits from AI are seldom an off-the-shelf product they can plug and play. In reality, it's typically a process of getting data, analyzing data, trying a machine learning algorithm on it, trying it again, and going through multiple cycles of development until it finally works, with a lot of uncertainty at the outset. But we don't do much R&D in Australia. Only 1.8% of our GDP goes into R&D, compared to the United States at 3.4% and the OECD at 2.7%. So that aspect to our industry where we don't really experiment much, I think limits us, and study after study in economics has shown how productivity is boosted also by R&D. And I think is a dimension to this challenge. So in the report, that I think the links will be shared on the chat tool with you all for the report if you want to access it. We do look at sovereign capability considerations. What is sovereign capability? It's not necessarily meaning all of the models are built in Australia. Some of them may be, and I think more of them need to be. But it is about the ability of your country, your industry and your government within the country to be able to manage these tools, to get value from them, to use them in the competitive interests of Australia's workers and Australia's companies. So let's look at some of the issues. Number one, I would identify as market concentration and competition policy. We've seen it happen in search, where Google has massive presence in the search market and has huge market share. And that's very hard for any other American, let alone Australian company to change. And there's huge issues around that market concentration. If you're a cafe and you get a bad review on Google search, you can't switch to another search engine. You've got to kind of go and fix it there, because if you go to another search engine, you won't necessarily be discovered. So there's strong market power. Now, Google in the current antitrust lawsuits in America is arguing they got big because they're good. There are other views, and that is all being examined and looked at by federal lawyers right now, and we should see some outcomes of that case fairly soon. But we take that onto the world of these foundational models. We are seeing lots of market concentration going on. We're seeing, Amazon investing in Anthropic. We're seeing Microsoft is a big owner of OpenAI and the ChatGPT products, so they're forming partnerships and they're owning a lot of the capability. So it looks like market concentration is going to happen. We're not the only ones observing this. The United Kingdom Competition and Markets Authority has studied this quite a bit. They put out an initial report. They've just published an update on 11th of April, where they create this diagram showing how they think monopolies are likely to form in the United Kingdom as around foundation models, where they can control critical inputs for foundation model development, the compute and the data. They control access to key points and routes to market for foundation model deployment. They form influential partnerships with the players, so sort of vertical integration happens. They can restrict access to critical inputs, restrict choice to FM servers, downstream self-service providers, and they can protect existing positions. So they're identifying this risk taking form and asking the questions: how will if it does take a monopoly structure with high levels of market concentration, how will this benefit the United Kingdom businesses? And I think the same sorts of risks and issues are present in Australia. 2, protecting the competitive interests of Australian industry and jobs. That is lead plaintiff Nick Andranakis, who represented a large number of taxi drivers who recently received a payout from Uber of 271.8 million Australian dollars due to the way Uber entered the market and broke a lot of existing rules, was argued in that case, and they won. But clearly what was going on with Uber was not beneficial to a lot of these taxi drivers. So he's just one, but there are tens of thousands of these people who had their incomes really severely impacted. And I think you've got to look at the growth of these models and ask those same sorts of questions about the competitive interests of Australian workers and Australian industries and Australian companies. There is a move towards efficiency, and there are other models, and that can all be argued, but we just can't discount what actually can happen to workers and segments of our industry when a tech-enabled solution arrives. And I think foundation models create that possibility. Data security is another key consideration. National governments are increasingly recognising the importance of keeping data nearby or in Australia. Edge computing policies to achieve this, to achieve what's called data localization, are becoming more common and more restrictive. The OECD estimates by 2023 there were 100 data localization measures in 40 countries. 2/3 of these countries have data flow prohibition in place, which is the most restrictive form. But there is definitely a move towards doing this as sensitive defence data, but health data, all sorts of data on citizens. We're wanting to increasingly ensure it's protected, and foundation models sort of vacuum this up or it could be stored in locations or used inside these models in ways that we're not sure how it gets used. So that's an issue. Another issue around sovereign capability on foundation models is fit for purpose training data. So I work with people in CSIRO who use AI foundation models for weather forecasting, and I think it's going to become a way better way of forecasting the weather. I think we're going to have big improvements in accuracy. However, we can't rely on North American or European weather data and just use it here. It won't work. We need to use our own data if we're going to get accurate forecasts. So this applies probably to a lot of things, not just weather. It could be relevant to health. It could be relevant to traffic. It could be relevant to our construction sector. Australian data will make more relevant and better AI foundation models for Australia that just work better here. The next one is stability and reliability of these models. There's lots of dimensions to this one, but if there is a monopoly and market concentration providers of foundation models in Australia, they can change pricing structures. They may not always be switched on the way we would want them to be. We've got to accept that big platforms like Twitter, which were used by a lot of Australians, had a sudden change of ownership, which led to a change in how that platform was presented to people. It led to huge concerns about content control, which are ongoing concerns, and its future in Australia has got some question marks over it. So the stability and reliability of models that a lot of Australians come to rely on might also be a consideration in the process. Content moderation is connected to that, has many dimensions to it. We know social polarization is happening as a consequence of social media, which highlights the importance of content moderation. But there's many dimensions to this. I'm working in the tourist sector, for example. They had to come to terms with TripAdvisor being a key source of information for people making decisions about where to have a holiday in Australia. But now we see the possibility that they're making their decisions from ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, and they're having a conversation with a large language model to determine where they're going to go. But the next step on some of these tools will be not just a suggested itinerary, but you hit click and buy, and it goes and buys all of the airline tickets and books all the hotels at the same time. So how do we know that it's being done objectively, that our businesses are getting a fair go and so forth? Cultural fit, language and imagery is a commonly cited reason that some countries are building their own large language models. And lastly, I think we do need to watch jobs in this space. When I started studying this in 2012, we overestimated the job impacts of AI. It was a net job creator. But we are watching something go on here. Unprecedented layoff in tech sector amidst major foundation generative AI investment. Globally, 1,106 tech companies laid off 250,000 staff in 2023. That was 51% more than 2022 and more than we've ever seen. It looks like 2024 will be similar. During January to April alone, there's been over 60,000 layoffs. The data come from layoffs.fyi. Does this signal anything about the impacts of AI foundation models on broader knowledge economy? Because whilst these layoffs are occurring, a lot of that investment is going into companies like Anthropic and other AI foundation model companies. So those issues are at play. But let's not forget David Ricardo as we do this. He was an economist who gave us the theories of comparative advantage of trade. There is a lot of good that happens in Australia too from having all these powerful tools at our fingertips that we don't have to invest in building. So let's not forget that entire dimension to the sovereign capability argument, that trade really helps and it lets us specialize and focus on what is our comparative advantage. I am running a bit out of time, so I'll go to global initiatives quickly. We are seeing a lot of activity. In November 2023, the UK government announced the AI Research Resource, which is a cluster of UK-based advanced high-performance computers for AI research and development. They've also had quite a few policies. Their Competition and Markets Authority, as I mentioned, is studying the market monopoly effects of foundation models, but they also are investing in building weather and climate forecasting AI foundation models and have purchased supercomputing capabilities to do that. The United States, I think the interesting one there is the NAIR, the National Artificial Intelligence Research Resource, the NAIR pilot, which will get its funding from the Create AI Act, which is currently before the Senate. It was introduced into the Senate. It's a bipartisan bill. That's what will authorize sort of a large amount of funding for it. And it provides compute power, data sets, and really those two main things, compute power and data sets to the AI community to start building foundation models. Europe are going to make AI factories across Europe that build AI foundation models. How are they going to do this? They're building supercomputers and the data sets that go with them and opening it up to the AI community. So we're going to see these AI factories start to emerge. They want to start building. Canada is doing it too. So they are making high-performance computing capabilities available to Canada's AI ecosystem to build new models. This was announced by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in April 2024. And it includes instruments designed to improve AI uptake and adoption. I look at Canada a lot because I think there are similarities to Canada's journey and ours. So I'll wind up on some strategy implications. And the next sort of round of all my work, which is starting to increasingly come out via NAIC and is about to hit the scenes, is all on strategy, the how-to aspects of AI. This is my framing of the AI strategy problem: adopt, adapt, govern, and it applies to foundation models. Adopt means working out the long list, the short list, and the shorter list of AI use cases, things where you can build a foundation model or a smaller model or adapt a foundation model to do something. Adapt is where you change, what Uber did to taxis. If it's about to play out in the knowledge economy and the services sector, we need to start to adapt our capabilities and our business models to this new world. Govern is about the ethics, the regulation, and I think we go from voluntary to legally binding obligations more in the future in Australia. And I think then also it's about innovation and experimentation and building that right kind of culture around AI. Let me quickly look at the adopt one, because in a lot of my work with companies and governments, this is what I'm focused on. I think my view of the future with foundation models is down here at the bottom. We are starting to build foundation models that support productivity within construction. So a model can do wide-ranging things in construction, such as building materials, supply chains. It can be integrated with building information models to optimize construction and manage all the uncertainty. So it could do a whole lot there. Education, weather, climate, and hazard forecasting is one we identify. Healthcare is another one we identify as a really important starting case. Mining and minerals exploration, agriculture. So we see this world where AI foundation models, where it makes sense for Australia to develop them for industry in the private sector or for government, start building these models to support productivity in industry sectors. I'm going to skip some of this stuff to sort of, just very quickly on this one. As we build these models, we know there is huge complexity choosing which ones to build and working out whether they have positive return on investment. Are they worth doing? Because a couple of weeks ago, BCG published a survey which found 30% of half of respondents said 30% of their organization's IT projects were failing to deliver desired value. I think it can apply to AI as well. It's challenging to get it right. And most of the problems are not aligned with business objectives and a lack of clarity on outcomes, unrealistic timeframes, not enough resources. If you were to look at Australia and foundation model making, you'd have these challenges as well. You'd want to work out what are the priority ones to build, where the benefit cost ratios are high and it makes sense. So I'm working with NAIC to develop these sorts of decision tools where we can look at criteria, one of which might be benefit cost ratio or return on investment. We can weight criteria, and those options down the side are different use cases or foundation models to be built. What's our priority set of use cases in AI? This is what I do with a company just looking at small AI models or AI adoption. It applies to a one-person architect firm, let's say, who is starting to try and work out how they can pick up AI, but it applies to an entire government agency or industry sector starting to look at what other foundation modeling capabilities at a larger scale that it could build. And we want to start to build portfolios of risk and return in these models. To wind up, sorry, I'm just flashing around slides. To wind up with some last thought, Erik Brynjolfsson studied this a lot for 20 years. He's looked into digital technology and more recently AI, and now almost exclusively generative AI, which is like sort of foundation models. We've seen something like a J-curve with earlier general purpose technologies like steam engine, electricity, and early computers. My reading of the evidence is that this will happen faster with AI. I think 2024 is going to be a year of harvesting AI capabilities. I see as almost every CEO is being asked by their board of directors, what is your game plan for generative AI? And there's a detailed interview with him in the Financial Times where he goes into some of these issues. Reskilling and upskilling. Interesting quote there from Matt Candy, who is Global Managing Partner in Generative AI at IBM. He says, if you want a tech job, do a liberal arts degree, learning languages, logic, design, and creative thinking. I'm not totally sure, but the skill set you need to perform in this world might alter and shift a bit. We've heard similar things from the CEO of NVIDIA, who says that the need for coding might still be there, but it's changed a bit. Lastly, if we do this well, AI foundation models mean better jobs, better work-life balance, and less screen times. There's critical equality of opportunity issues. There's critical issues about how we pick up this powerful toolkit, but it can be used to get a lot of really better outcomes for Australians. Thank you very much. I would love to go to questions.
Wow, Stefan, I feel like I need a bit of a power nap after that. That was such a lot of information. Thank you so much. I think we've had a lot of questions come through, and for anyone for whom we can't answer your question today, I would definitely recommend that you download and read Stefan's report. We've provided the link in the chat, but that will help you to access some additional information. It will certainly cover off a lot of what you've just gone through, Stefan. But I'm going to come to the first question, which perhaps is the million or billion dollar question in regard to intellectual property. So I know that there's a number of court cases, and this is quite a live issue for a number of those organisations that you shared earlier, that issue of intellectual property being accessed to build these large language models. To what extent do you see that that is going to diminish or cease the use of these models in the current form? I suppose the cat is out of the bag now, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I think the cat is out of the bag. I think there's so much momentum and investment in building these foundation models, and their business model really is vacuuming up all the information out there and then making it available. There is some talk about how they can sort of ensure that artists and writers and musicians are going to be adequately funded for the use of their intellectual property. I suspect, and I haven't really been following it closely enough, I suspect there's a lot of court cases going on to try and figure this stuff out. I don't know where they're all up to. It certainly is a highly relevant ethical issue, but I'd say I don't see it ending anytime soon. And it is then a consideration around data sovereignty, that it would be nice to have Australian foundation models eating Australian data and then using that with a greater ability to ensure that, you know, if Indigenous Australians have created artworks, it's been digested into a model and it's being used for commercial purposes by someone else. There should be some sort of benefit to the person who has created that. And I think if it is an Australian foundation model with eating Australian data, we can control it and manage it a bit better is one thing. Yeah, but I think by and large, this new world we're in, at the moment, there's very limited capability to do anything about that.
Tricky. And I've been following loosely. There are some court cases, certainly in New York and some other locations that are worth following. There are some questions here. I know that you do a lot of research into the climate issues that Australia is facing, the world is facing. So there's some interesting questions here in regard to how this advancement of AI and the related use of energy in data centers, how that might create an impact. And perhaps a parallel question is the lack of computing power. Do the sustainability and that compute power, would that suggest that maybe it's actual physical or environmental capability that might create a new AI winter? Or do you think we can innovate our way out of some of those challenges as well? Big topics.
I think we can innovate our way out of some of those challenges. Yes, the computational resources needed to create an AI foundation model are associated with carbon emissions, if and only if that it's been powered by fossil fuel. If it's been powered by renewable energy, that's a different story. That's something that we can do more of. Again, I think the growth of edge computing creates the prospect that we can start to control for and manage the carbon emissions associated with training these models. Now, my understanding is it's still pretty small compared to global emissions. If we compare it to, say, deforestation or global jet travel or car usage or electricity generation for other purposes, the amount that is being taken up by computational power for AI models would be around that 1% mark. it is growing quickly and everything matters because of the importance of the climate crisis. It's really critical. We look for all opportunities to reduce emissions. Hopefully the AI community does increasingly get its act together on this one, and we can get carbon accredited, carbon neutral, carbon positive AI models, which would either rely on offsets or would be also using renewable energy to be able to power the compute that's there. And I think if you look to some of the big tech corporations, they're not oblivious to this. They are talking about it. They are introducing things. It's something we all want to keep an eye on, and I think we want to push for. I don't think it will stop us building these models, and I think, you know, it still is. If you look at the whole climate change challenge, this is a small piece, an important piece, but not going to be where you get the biggest carbon emission savings in the short term. These models can also help us understand the climate and manage this transition to, yeah.
Yeah, and I think as scientists and climate specialists start to think about the use of AI in advancing their own research in these topics, perhaps we will see that AI will actually help to address some of the challenges that we're facing, and fingers crossed that's the case. So I have a question, or a couple of questions here, just to get clarity on what you are thinking in regards to AI models in Australia. So I know that, well, certainly I've seen figures bandied about that any government looking to create its own foundation model is looking at a bill of $1 billion, I suppose, these days. And every time I look into it, it's doubled. Are you thinking, you know, realistically, is that an option for Australia, or are there other kind of smaller models that we might seek to develop that might help to offset some of those more lack of Australian specific data that you mentioned?
Yeah, so I mean, I've heard some of those numbers as well, and I think you know, to build a model like GPT-4 or Claude 3 or Gemini, that those models are huge and very expensive, but we don't need to make them. Right. We can adapt them, and there's a huge diversity of AI foundation models there, and there's a huge diversity of price tags as well, and they don't need to be anywhere near that big. Some of them may be way more accessible than we think, and I think there is a blurry line about what's an AI foundation and model and what's not. Let's, I think, not worry too much about that. Let's look at return on investments in building the model, and then start to look at the value of using Australian data. But I would suspect that we can find lots of spaces where we can cost effectively build a foundation model, and then it has significant benefit. I think in health diagnostics, I mean, my mind is changing a bit on that one because of the power of Gemini Med, and I think it is, if it's as good as what they're saying it is, that's quite amazing. But my initial thinking when I started this work was that would be a really important way to go in, would be to leverage electronic health records in Australia, which are confidential but really valuable data set to get really accurate diagnosis here in Australia. But maybe, yeah, I'm a little bit unsure, and we'll see how that one plays out about the importance of Australian data versus a global data set. But I think there'll still be the scope for that. I think, you know, New South Wales Planning is doing this really interesting and amazing, great thing with AI at much, much lower cost, but could be transformative. We have a housing crisis in Australia. There's everyone knows accommodation insecurity is a massive driver. One of the ways we can improve that is speeding up the development assessment process. So every new house that is built has to go through an assessment process. Now, we could put all the development assessment into an AI foundation model and train it up to know whether or not this proposed house being built is suitable in that location, whether it's got all the right sort of things in terms of height, storage, number of windows, energy efficiency, all the other things they might look at. It could possibly perform that analysis really quickly, and then, you know, a lot more development could be assessed more quickly without any loss of quality. So they're working on a problem like that, but that would be a case of leveraging a data set that's underexploited and then doing something really valuable with it. Is it a foundation model or just an AI model? You know, kind of who cares? I think let's start to look for those sorts of opportunities. Another one around, though, I think weather forecasting and climate forecasting is really critical. We get better at specifically, accurately forecasting where a bushfire is going to start, where it will spread. Longer term heat wave projections and forecasts become really important for adapting to climate change. I think that could be a foundation model where all of our climate meteorological data, of which we've got bucket loads, could be used in a deep learning model to start to provide those capabilities for really accurate forecasts, long and short term.
Yeah, I do think those specialist AI models is where the next attention seems to be. Yeah. And certainly I'm going to check out that Med Gemini model that you've referenced, and it gives us a whole new dimension to Dr. Google, as it may actually be more accurate and less frightening.
Yeah.
I have been a couple of questions about the impact of this on jobs, and I know that you didn't have a heap of time to go into that. For people interested in getting into this space, do you have any advice or recommendations for people thinking about how this might affect their industry or their job or function? Interesting, your thoughts.
It's a really important question. So we did a report in 2016 on the future of work and jobs, and we looked at the Frey and Osborne study from the University of Oxford, which said 47% of all jobs are going to get done by a robot or a computer. That was back in 2013, I think they published it, or thereabouts. It was completely wrong. It didn't happen. AI and automation was associated. There were sections of the labour market where it was impacted, but it was a net job creator, and we didn't see anywhere near those sorts of losses. There were some fairly naive assumptions in that work about what the AI and robotics would be capable of. However, I think we've got to look at a couple of things that went on in the last year, one of which is the tech sector itself. Is it structural, what is going on there? Because you can't deny what the data is showing us, what people who look at labour market statistics in the tech sector are finding. Is it just a blip? Is it just a repositioning to something else? Or is it that they're finding they need less workers and they need more AI? To sort of simplify it. It kind of looks a bit that way because they're putting billions of dollars into AI. They're putting billions of dollars into buying GPUs to create accelerator chips so that they can occupy the AI-enabled search market, for example. These are the tech, but Grammarly was another one to downsize its software engineering workforce by quite a lot to go into generative AI, because you can imagine how tools like large language models, ChatGPT, influence what Grammarly is able to do. So I think we can ask some questions there, and then we can ask some questions about is it a sort of canary in the coal mine for the knowledge and services sector where the majority of Australians are employed? Does it have that effect? If we are talking about a 50% improvement in the speed with which software engineers can do their job, and management consultants are in there too, and a lot of knowledge workers are in there too. Let's say if that's that big, do we one option though is we're really clever with it and we move to the 4-day week. We spend an extra day at the beach, and we get these enormous benefits out of it. And I think that's a pathway that we can start to explicitly work towards here, and that would be wonderful. And this is where we sort of stop talking about AI and start talking about the labour market and policies and what Australia really wants. And this is why it's so critical for non-AI experts to get into this discussion and start to guide what this toolkit does for us, I think is one thing. But I think it is absolutely worth watching. I think it is what Uber did to taxis. Let's start to understand that earlier in the space of AI. And there is, in my mind, quite a bit of uncertainty about how it plays out in the future. Lastly, I'd say JP Morgan survey finds that 57% of all Australians don't even like AI, right? They think it's going to be more worse than beneficial to them. That's the reality of this. And the most common reason given is job loss. And I think for the companies I work with, some of them, and government agencies, I think that there is a huge factor behind the scenes when you start talking about AI adoption. You talk about all these plans to put in these amazing AI systems, and they are. But a lot of people are thinking about what's it mean for my ability to generate income and get my kids through school. So we got to answer that question as part of the journey.
Well, perhaps we can leave it there, Stefan, and kind of reflecting on your comment about the 4-day week and using this as an opportunity to create the future that we want and the future that we want for our kids. I think as with all of these things, there is a limit to what we can influence at the global level. But for Australia, perhaps we can. This is a tipping point for us to really think about the type of jobs and the vision that we want for our own country. And, I know the National AI Centre is very optimistic about the impact and the positive outcomes that we can get from AI. And so we will be cautiously optimistic that we can navigate our way through this. And I, for one, am ready to sign up for the 4-day weekend. It sounds ideal to me. Thank you so much for your time today, Stefan. I'm really grateful. What we
and I
do
agree,
want
Beth,
to...
that's the future I see too. I think this is, hugely positive, but needs to be managed.
Absolutely, like everything. So with that, I do want to make mention that perhaps it's important for us all to acknowledge now that AI isn't just for somebody else to think about and have a focus on. It's really important for all of us everywhere to understand AI and the opportunities available to us all in our personal and professional lives. We have a free AI course that you can go and do. We recommend that you make time to do this and you share it with your friends and your colleagues and anyone that you know that has a fear of AI. Actually, part of that might just be that you're not quite sure what it is. And this might be one way that you can get that basic understanding of what AI is and how you might use it. And the best way to kind of explore it is to go and start using it as well. So we welcome and encourage all of you to make use of that resource. And then please keep in touch with the National AI Centre. We run these events a lot and we always are on the lookout for other types of topics and speakers. So please also get in touch with us if you would like to collaborate on any of the projects or topics that you've heard about today. We mentioned the events that we have coming up in Sydney. We are going to other cities. And of course, we have our National AI Leadership Summit happening on the 21st of October in Melbourne. So put that in your diaries. And we will look forward to seeing you again at another National AI Centre event very soon. Thank you very much for your time.